Why, hello there. Please, come in, get out of the bad weather, and welcome once again to Rainy Day Reading. I'm here today with our special guest, the manliest man to ever grace Anna Twitter, Spaceman Hardy. How are you doing, sir?
Yo, what's up?
Pleasure to have you. And, of course, from Infinite Rainy Days, the man who earned his own day for releasing his articles, Zachary Whitley Perlmutter. How are you doing, sir?
Perlmutter?
Am I saying your last name wrong?
Yes.
Well, this is revenge for Hologen, then.
Okay.
Alright, gentlemen, we are here to talk about People of the Desert, a 1969 newspapers manga that was released, well, like I said, 1969. I'm screwing this all up. Basically, what I'm getting at is, this was originally released under a different pen name, but it was later revealed to be a very early Hayao Miyazaki work. How do you guys feel about that? Yeah.
How do I feel about that? Well, I'll get to my full thoughts on it, but you can definitely see influences of his later stuff in this one.
I definitely can agree with that. But, as always, here on Rainy Day Reading, we love to advocate that we can all enjoy reading, and so, Hardy, I'd like to start with you. What have you been reading lately?
Well, thanks to Viz Media recently putting it out, I have been reading the tankobons, or collected editions, of Master Keaton, which have never before been released in the United States, and if you've ever followed me on Twitter for any length of time, you know how big of a Master Keaton fan I am, so this is a pretty big deal for me.
Yeah, Hardy's entire Twitter feed consists of goats and Master Keaton.
And
I
food
can't
porn.
confirm. That's true. I can confirm all of that. And I have been collecting Master Keaton myself. I very much enjoy it. But please tell us, for the audience, what is Master Keaton about, and why do you enjoy it so much?
Well, Master Keaton, as you can no doubt tell, is a master of life. Basically, if you were to put Sherlock Holmes, Indiana Jones, and MacGyver all together, that would be our main character, Taichihiro Keaton. It's basically an episodic manga. Every chapter is a different story about the life and exploits of this one man who is seemingly normal at first, but when you dig deeper into it, you learn all of his hidden talents and all of his abilities, and every single story is a complete different adventure, and if you don't read it, then I will hunt you down and throw you out a window, so it's great.
I second his death threat, by the way.
Yeah.
I agree. Master Keaton is a wonderful series.
Hardy, when you say master of life, do you mean that he's a master of the martial arts too?
Yes, actually.
Interesting. Maybe I should get some Tai Chi tips from him.
He is if I recall correctly, he is a black belt in judo.
In judo.
Yes, in one of the chapters, he goes up against this former heavyweight boxer and is able to take him out with a foot sweep and a judo flip.
I think I remember that moment. That was in his college class, wasn't it? He kept showing up late.
No, that was a different chapter entirely. Yeah.
Oh,
this is
I apologize.
This boxer is a mob member who is trying to kidnap this little girl that is in his protective care, and he's a former heavyweight boxer, and Keaton, of course, distracts him by saying your shoelaces are untied, then foot sweeps him and flips him over his shoulder for a 2-hit knockout.
I do
Further
remember
going to prove you don't mess with Master Keaton.
Very true. I do remember
Whenever I think of whenever I think of what Harley just described, I think of that gag from Fullmetal Panic from Mofu, where Sasuke takes out 3 different sumo wrestlers by using tactical weapons. And it's played up for laughs.
It's just like that scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where the guy attacks Indy with a sword and Indy just takes out his gun and shoots him.
Oh, okay.
I read that they brought in a sword master for that fight. Like, they were playing a big sword fight, and the actor was the one that just pulled the gun and shot and said, that's what Indy would do. And
so the full story was that Harrison Ford was really hot. I think he had, like, diarrhea and he was getting nauseous, and He just said to Spielberg, "Can we get through this already? I have to take a shit."
Wait, what?
But anyway,
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you, Hardy, for sharing your thoughts on Master Keaton. Whitley,
Yo.
what have you been reading lately?
So I'm actually going to go in a different hemisphere of the globe. And this is something that I asked Walt about, and he approved. I finished reading The Search, which is the spin-off manga from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
If I can say one thing before you go into your description about it,
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know if that does qualify as a manga, but I think that Avatar: Last Airbender does share enough similarities with anime of the time that you really... The line is so blurred there that I really think it's okay to include it. And that's why I've said yes to this, so...
Yeah.
Everyone's going to have their own opinion about that. So a lot of people's opinion, though, if it just consists of it came from America, so it's not manga, I'm going to smack you over the face with my 3 volumes of I Love Halloween.
well, I
Okay.
mean, there is such a thing as OEM after all, original English manga. So
Right.
Exactly. So
I think Scott Pilgrim qualifies.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
that does. But now,
Yeah, so
Whitley, please continue.
So anyway, for those who don't know, Avatar: The Last Airbender is actually my favorite show of all time. I've seen it 3 times. Once just recently, because I had to write an article on Infinite Rainy Day about it, which you can actually see on the site if you look back a little bit. But one of the big questions that was never really answered in the show, and it wouldn't even be a big question if the show didn't treat it like a last-minute what the hell, is what happened to Zuko's mom? I'm sure that everybody who's watched the show has wondered what happened to Zuko's mom.
I certainly have, yes. I don't know if you're waiting for us to answer that or not.
Well, you can answer it if you want. I mean, I don't know if Hardy's seen the show or not.
yeah, I've seen it.
So have you wondered what happened to Zuko's mom?
Yeah, kinda.
Okay, so the search kind of delves into that.
Well, you're not going to spoil it for us, are you, Whitman?
I'm not going to spoil it for you. All I'm going to say is that, for all intents and purposes, it is a lot better than it had any right to be.
All right.
I mean, for a simple, like, the answer pretty much is one of those, like...
You're treading on very fragile ground, Whitley.
No, so
Pick your words
it's
carefully.
one of those, like, whatever happened to her types of stories. One of those mystery stories. One of those detective mystery stories with flashbacks to help fill in the gaps. But I was kind of nervous because I didn't really... I honestly haven't liked anything from the franchise outside of the show itself. Like, I didn't even like Avatar: Legend of Korra all that much either. And I was kind of nervous that this was going to be bad. Especially since I'd heard from some people online that it was kind of eh. And in some ways, it's not like... It kind of plays out like an extended episode of the show itself. In that it feels kind of like one half filler episode, one half story-based episode. It does leave open another question that needs to be resolved in a future series of books. I hope it does. But as far as I'm concerned, it was incredibly satisfying.
Yeah.
I read that a long time back, and if I recall in The Search, is it The Search or The Promise where they delve also into Zuko's childhood a lot more than they did in the show?
I think The Promise, if I remember correctly, only like taps on it a little bit. Like there is one. I haven't read The Search. I've seen a video that documented it. The Search is The Promise. My mistake. The Promise is really more about how the new Republic that's in Avatar: Legend of Korra came to be. It's less about Zuko's mother.
I've read The Promise and The Search. I get to read The Rift, which I would love to, and I believe that one's about the industrial and spiritual rift between the world. But yeah, The Promise was about how all these fire-bending citizens had lived in the Earth Kingdom for so long, they didn't want to leave what was essentially now their homeland, and it created this whole mess when basically all these politics of trying to solve these after-war issues started colliding with basically human feelings and their homes.
And again, there's relevant subtext there nowadays. A lot of Native Americans and Native Canadians feel like they've been given the short end of the stick in terms of Canada and the United States. So there's relevancy there.
There absolutely is. But
Yeah.
I do agree with you. The Search is a wonderful story. And thank you for recommending that to our audience, Whitley. Now, for what I've been reading, I had not planned to reread this series, but in excitement over the anime announcement for the fall season, I began rereading One Punch Man, and I am very much enjoying it. Have you two had the chance to read that?
Not yet.
No.
Well,
No.
for those of you who don't know, One Punch Man is about the adventures of Saitama, an average man working as an average hero with the amazing ability to beat any opponent in one punch. This is a man who
Hence
has
the
broken...
title.
Yeah, exactly, hence the title. He's a man that's broken past all limits, achieved strength unimaginable, and can defeat any opponent regardless of size, stature, or backstory, if this manga is any way to go off of. And in a way, this series, what basically started as a gag series, has in a way almost turned into a commentary on superheroes. As the series goes along, we meet all these different heroes. People like the licenseless writer, who is the C rank 1 hero. We meet the Blizzard from Hell, the B rank 1 hero. Meet the A rank 1, and we meet all the S ranks, who are supposed to be these godly, powerful people, and we learn more about them, who they are, why they got into heroics, how they feel about their own strength. And it sort of becomes a commentary on how strength dictates how you view yourself and why you use it for the way you do. For example, you could say that one of the more noble characters, Bang, the S-Class Rank 3, basically one of the strongest characters in the series, you can almost say he became a hero solely to help fund his dojo and find new recruits. Even though he does feel like using his martial arts, a very defensive style of martial arts to defend people, it is clear that he does have his own motives behind it, much more than protecting people. And then there are some heroes that are just doing it downright to prove how strong they are. And in the end, you have Saitama, who doesn't care about rankings. He doesn't care about anything. He always did being a hero as a hobby, and that was all it would ever be to him, is just he started fighting people and protecting people as a hobby. He has no other motivations, no other ulterior motives beyond that. And in a way, you're always kind of questioning why he's doing it for that reason, but at the same time, you can understand that for that reason as well, he also has a stake in any fight he does go into. Even when you see before he gets his powers, he's willing to fight for that. And in the end, that's what makes you trust that he wants to stand as a true hero, even when he's become this super powerful being, is all the struggles we see him go through before he becomes this powerful being. Because that's the one other thing about many of these heroes. We see that many of them either have their powers from very early age and have just grown these big heads to go with their big powers, or they develop these powers for all the wrong reasons and have just, in a sense, while they were physically strong, it's made them so mentally weak.
Yeah.
So how would you say this compares to something like Tiger and Bunny, or another superhero manga?
Or Punch Out.
Punch Out.
When you say One Punch Man and you describe the main character, I instantly thought of Little Mac.
Sadly, this has really nothing to do with Punch Out.
Absolutely nothing.
I honestly would love to see. I could see it now. Like, maybe there's a Mugen character of Saitama where he's just so overpowered he beats everyone in one punch.
Well, yeah, there is a character like that. It's called Mugen Chuck Norris.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. There needs to be a
Yeah.
mod now for One Punch Man for that. But that's
Mugen Chuck Norris, the only Mugen to actually be the real Chuck Norris.
Whatever.
Yeah, okay. What were we
Sorry.
talking about before we got on Mugen?
One Punch Man.
Yes. I sadly have not read Tiger and Bunny, although I have heard good things about it. The other superhero manga that I've read are, a while back I read Ratman, and I've been recently reading My Hero Academia running in Jump, which actually comes out next month. I plan to pick that up, and that'll probably be something I talk about in the future. But to compare them, both of those stories, in fact, a lot of superhero stories I find are about these heroes basically training, becoming the heroes that they want to be through hard work. Meanwhile, we jump into One Punch Man from a point in Saitama's life where he's done all the hard work, and he's basically reached the point where he's the all-supreme, most powerful being, and he's trying to cope with the boredom of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's... I'm sorry, go for it.
So now the obvious question is, who would win in a fight, Superman or Saitama?
Both are characters of limitless potential and supreme strength, and the simple fact is, you would basically have to roll a dice 100 times, or no, not roll a dice, flip a coin 100 times, and one side's Superman, one side's Saitama, and whoever gets the most wins.
That's who they need to be pitting up against Superman instead of Goku.
I agree. I'll tell you right now, I saw Death Battle's recent Superman versus Goku video, and, you know, I always enjoy those videos for the fights. It's always just fun, like, yeah, cool, we're gonna see these two characters fight. It's whatever, it's popcorn fluff. But I really felt that they hit it they hit the nail on the head with their reasoning for why Goku can never win against Superman.
That's assuming Goku would even want to fight Superman in the first place.
I saw the Dorkly comic about that, and you're absolutely right.
No, Goku would want to fight Superman as a sparring match, but not to the death.
Yeah.
No, that's what people don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Goku's too noble. I don't remember much about Dragon Ball Z as a show. I just know that Goku was always that noble hero. Like, he would even give his villains senzu beans so that he can fight them properly.
Which is the stupidest thing ever.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, but that's the character of Goku for you.
Well, if you're gonna if you're gonna be noble, you gotta be tough.
Yeah.
Right. We now have our main topic manga, which was only 52 pages. So I imagine we'll have a bit to talk about, but not too much. This is People of the Desert. The Japanese title, I believe, was Sabaku no Tami. And this was a very early... It was revealed very much later that this was an early Hayao Miyazaki manga. I'm sorry, I seem to have forgotten to write down the pen name that he actually put down this manga for. Did anyone catch that by any chance?
Who cares? It's Miyazaki.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it's
like for all the figures, Miyazaki was 3 years older than I am right now when he wrote this manga. I'm turning 25 in like a week as of the time of recording this podcast. Miyazaki was like 29 or 28.
That might explain why it looks so amateurish and childish.
Yeah. Very, very true. Well, I guess since you've less in there, we can't talk about the artwork. This did run in a newspaper, I should mention, on 69. So, for all we know, Miyazaki could have been listening to the newest hit on the block, Summer of '69, when he wrote this. Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, it's also aside from being a time capsule for Miyazaki's talent, it's a time capsule for anime as a whole and manga as a whole, because this was, I think Osamu Tezuka was still alive at the time, and he had just made anime was just starting to become like a big thing in Japan with like Astro Boy and some of his early stuff, and you see a lot of that influence of the early anime style in this manga.
It's very true. I've not read Astro Boy, but I've read Shin Takarajima, a short adventure series from Osamu Tezuka, and there were a lot of similarities between the artwork of that and the artwork of this, mainly in these simplistic character designs. I gotta admit, I also like the backgrounds done in this series, because I oftentimes, one of the things that's always been a pet peeve to me is when you see characters talking but there's nothing behind them. It's always just just white space, and I find that the fact that this had backgrounds, even if they were kind of a bit crudely drawn, I did like. And they did convey a lot more of the world.
I also like how I mean there are some interesting aesthetics here that definitely show the time and Miyazaki. Like for all intents and purposes, while the adult characters look very Tezukan, the kid characters look very Miyazaki. Like the main character, I think his name is
His name is Tim. We haven't even given the plot description, to be honest. So how about I do that real quick before, and you hold that thought, Whitley.
Right.
So, Tim is a simple boy, a sheep herder, living in the desert by an oasis with his father, when a man named, and excuse me if I mispronounce this, this was a horrible name, Kugil, Kughil. Does anyone else want to try pronouncing that?
I think it's Kugil.
Kugil? Alright, I'll go with that.
It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, transliterations don't always work well in English languages, so there's a lot of room for error.
Just call him Ned.
I shall call you Squishy, and you shall be mine, and you will be my Squishy.
I shall call him Betty.
Oh boy, a little rabbit. I'm gonna name him George and love him and hug him and everything. I didn't know if we were just gonna keep naming off I'm going to name you jokes, but that one from Looney Tunes always stuck with me.
Anyway.
Yes, I know. We get off topic a lot here. I apologize.
Well, at least as long as there's no Teletubbies jokes, then I guess we're alright.
I have not seen Teletubbies in a decade, but I will do my best to provide you one before the end of this podcast.
Focus.
Yes, the man Kugil shows up at the doorstep, weakened by the Guitar Empire, who is going to conquer the So Cute Empire. I didn't even freaking read that until I said it out loud. But yeah, the empire that's invading is the Kitarl, which is like, that's fine. But then the empire they're invading is called the So Cute, and its sisters are called So Cutians. Wait, what was that, Hardy?
Secutions.
Secutions? Oh.
That's what I'd say.
I'm sorry, I prefer the one that Walt pointed out. I think it's a lot funnier.
Secutians? That sounds like a species from Space Dandy. But anyway, again, off topic, the Kital Empire quickly destroys Tem's house and kills his father, thus sending him on a quest across the desert with Kugil to end the reign of the Kitarl Empire.
Well, what else do you expect from alien space cats? Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and along the way they stumble upon...
Yeah, Kitarl.
And instead of Kitarl from Outlaw Star. Sorry.
Yeah, and then along the way they stumble upon a village that's under an attack called Pejite.
Yes,
I thought it was Pajit.
As you can see, there are a lot of creative names for all of these different things, and that can lead to many different pronunciations for each one, as you're seeing Among Us.
But when I looked at the spelling of the city in the translation that I got, I thought to myself, I actually did double take. I thought to myself, wait a minute. Oh, I see what you did there, Miyazaki.
What did
basically, well. I mean, I've seen Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind 7 times now, and one of the cities, as everybody here knows, anybody who follows me knows, anybody who's really big into anime knows, one of the big warring kingdoms in that movie is called Pejite.
Are you saying this was meant as sort of a spiritual prequel to Nausicaa?
I would not be surprised.
I'm gonna admit something that I'm probably gonna make at least Zach very sad. I have not seen Nausicaa.
You haven't?
Or I probably have, but I have not paid attention to the story. So I'm very sad.
It's a very personal movie to me. I recognize that it's not like narratively, it's not the most cohesive, but in many ways, it reminds me kind of like what Doug Walker said about those early Disney movies. This is kind of like my Snow White or my Pinocchio, in that it holds up more on an emotional level than it does an intellectual level.
All I remember is Shia LaBeouf and Jaya Buns.
Wait, what?
Yep. Shia LaBeouf is Asbel in that movie's dub.
Oh, really?
And giant bugs.
Yeah, I mean, I happen to really love it. Like
I watched it when I was drunk,
recognize,
so I don't remember that much.
I recognize Ajesu Otaku's problems with the film, but at the same time, I can't help but love it.
Okay. So, back to the people of the desert. This is basically supposed to be... I've seen this story described as basically a hero's fight against a warring nation from the perspective of those following the hero. Which, basically, that hero is supposed to be Kugel. He leads the revolution. He's the one trying to fight back against the Empire. Meanwhile, you have Tem and the two friends he meets along the way. I believe the girl's name was Susan or Sazin.
Sasen.
I don't know which.
Sasen.
Sasen,
Yeah.
okay.
Who, by the way, looks like Sheeta from Castle in the Sky.
Another Miyazaki film I have not seen.
What?
You're gonna hate me by the end of this. Just get ready to get used to it.
Oh, come on, man. Whatever.
Let me finish. And his friend, a thief named Tan, Tahn. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Okay, I guess not, since no one responded. And we we see these three children going through the city, seeing the horrors, basically, of the guitar's rule over these people of Petit. What was it? Petit. Pejite. That's what I'll call it.
Tomato.
Exactly.
Let's call the whole thing off.
No, we're not gonna call the whole thing.
No,
off
that
just
was the
'cause-
next line in that song that Hardy quoted.
Oh, okay. I thought you were seriously saying we don't know how to pronounce any of this stuff. Let's just call the whole podcast off.
Anyway.
No. Are you kidding? I got a Tai Chi early
I
to
apologize
do
that you have
this.
to see us at our most like absolute lost and I guess just unfocused. But I guess that's because there isn't that much to this story. As I said, it's only 52 pages. It ends
on a cliffhanger.
Yes, it does, in fact. This is a series all about Kujel's leading his revolution to try and prepare to fend the city of Kuchin, the last surviving So-Cute city. Basically, it has not been taken by the Gatal, who have been under attack by their forces. And we meet up with them in the city right as they're about to mount their biggest assault. And we see Tem trying to fight back against the system, trying to escape slavery, trying to find a spy within the revolution. And it's basically... And a lot of the bigger action of the revolutionaries preparing for war, we don't see a lot of that, because this whole story is mainly focused on the children and what they have to go through throughout this story because of this raging war between these two forces.
It actually pulls in Avatar: The Last Airbender in that, just like that show, the war isn't the focus, but it is still in the background, and you constantly get it drawn back in. So it's not like it's being ignored, but the real focus is less on the war and more on the characters and their journey in spite of the war.
Yes, exactly. So you have this character Tem, very quickly forced to grow up with his father's death and dragged into the wasteland of the desert. You have Susan, whose only real goal seems to be to find her brother within the city of Petit, who she sadly is never able to find. Hardy, I should have warned you right now, we don't exactly do spoiler alerts here.
Yeah, she did.
That's a good point. Yes, it is sad, but death does follow Tem throughout much of this series.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a downer how many people die in this comic.
Everyone dies. The end. Rocks fall.
That is kind of how it is, which is funny because this was supposed to be like, basically this was supposed to be a newspaper comic that, you know the same way like children, when you were kids, you'd ask your parents for the comics from the newspaper. This is basically what this was, the comics in the newspaper. And
it's more like narrative centric, and it's actually interesting that the underlying message of the last sentence, which spells out the message of the entire comic, is that war is awful, people die, live with it, and move on.
Yeah, it is a very sombering message for kids to be reading, and that...
That could be why it was ended on a cliffhanger.
That is very true. Yeah, I guess in a way it's so the kids can imagine Tem went on to live an okay life because everyone else fought the war and he could just keep scurrying in the background.
That's not what it implied.
No,
it's not
it
what
didn't.
It implies at all.
He was leading troops by the end of the series, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
he was. Yeah, well, war general in the making. There you go.
War general in the making. Child soldier in the making, more like it.
Well, sadly, back during... I'm assuming this took place during the 10th century, 11th century, I think it said?
Well, it takes place in like the... From what I gathered from it, it takes place in kind of like the Han Dynasty, Mughal Dynasty, Asia. So,
yeah.
Around that time.
Yeah. I'm actually trying now to think where would we pin the location, because it took place mostly in desert cities. I'm trying to think of a desert.
It was over there.
I'm sorry. I was just curious where you'd place the story in the world.
Woo. No, well, obviously, they tells you that it was in like Central Asia, but
yeah.
Even though the kingdoms themselves are fictional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Miyazaki had that one random chapter saying, "Oh, by the way, why are the Kitaro doing all these things?" Well, just so you know, it's like so out of place. It's random info dump right smack dab in the middle of the story.
It basically pauses the story and says, "Let me tell you the tale of da 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 da."
Yeah.
It's one of those stories.
The tale of the guitar. And you would think, like, well, if you're really going to do this, does that mean you're introducing characters? Does that mean you're trying to make us sympathetic with the guitar? No, the guitar are pretty much the most one-note villains you could ever see. Because they're ruthless to women and children. They're more than happy to slaughter anyone that even so much as dares to look at them the wrong way.
The entire reason for their war was because they saw people had things they didn't have and they wanted it, so they took it. I mean,
yeah.
It's no development at all.
Well, it's realistic in the sense that there historically there have been people who have done stuff like that, but yeah, they are pretty one note.
It's just it's a pretty blatant dig at the Mongolians. For one thing. Yeah, it's even to the design of their armor. Like, oh yeah, you can call them a Qatar all you want, but yeah, these are the Mongolians.
Yeah. Can we bring up like the animation style now too? Because I think that's interesting to point out.
I don't think manga has animation with it.
Yeah, you mean
I'm
the
sorry,
art
I'm very unfamiliar with this medium.
Not unless you flip the pages really fast.
I'm very unfamiliar with this medium. Can I talk about the art style?
Yes, you may.
All right, so going back to my point from what I said earlier, you can see this not even as a snapshot of early Miyazaki, but also early like anime. Like I said, the kid characters look like Miyazaki characters. Tem looks a little bit like Patsu from Castle in the Sky. His female friend looks like Shita from Castle in the Sky. And Tan looks a little bit like Asbel from Nazca, the Valley of the Wind. And then you have the adult characters who are very Tezukan in style. And the one thing I guess I kind of miss about early anime is that they have noses.
That
well,
is
not
very
just
true.
noses, like long, elongated snouts, even.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I remember I'd written an article on Infinite Rainy Day joking about how the anime style has evolved over time. And one of the things I mentioned was the drastically disappearing nose.
That is true. You're absolutely right, Hardy, that they are snouts, but I feel like that was also just part of the evolution as, like, you see throughout the decades. different art styles, like, it all culminates into what you see in the 80s and 90s, where finally people look like people. They've got noses, they got stuff. And then somewhere in the 2000s, we start getting into this very, I guess moe is the best way to describe it, where people no longer had very visible noses, the bigger eyes, basically everything was made cuter. And here I would also agree that the character designs are supposed to be cuter, but not in the same way as moe, but in the more general sense of cute.
I don't
Well, it's very
know.
old. It's very old-fashioned Disney.
I'm reading this and looking at it, and the last thing I think of this artwork is cute. Because, yeah, it's a bit too sketchy and, dare I say, amateurish to really label it as cute. Because it is early Miyazaki before, he actually got good.
Yes.
I'd argue he shows potential here. There are bits and elements of promise. I actually think that the biggest holdback of this manga is that, with I think like maybe 4 or 5 exceptions, there isn't a single page that goes by that doesn't have excessive drone-ish narration.
That's another thing, is that it was narrating things that you could actually see in the caption. I'm like, it's completely ignoring the show don't tell rule blatantly. It was at one point where someone had a speech bubble, said, "Quickly, let's throw stones at them," and then over to the side it narrates, "And so the children gathered stones and threw them at the soldiers." I'm like, I kind of already got that.
Yeah.
Show don't tell, Miyazaki. Jeez.
It did have a very weird style to it, and I think it was part of because I don't know fully if Miyazaki knew what he wanted to do with this, because I think there were far more speech bubbles by the end of this than there were in the beginning. Yeah. Everything seemed to be a part of the side text. And then,
you know what it reminds me of?
What?
It reminds me of a guy whose talent was developing as he was writing the story. So you see the rough early stuff, which is all unfocused and disjointed and very simple, and as it's going on, the story is somehow like getting more. I wouldn't say it's getting better, but it's getting more investing. Like toward the very beginning, when I started reading, I'm like, "Oh, this is boring. I'm not interested in this at all." And then as it was going on, it was still really clunky, but I was getting more invested in it as it was approaching the end. And I was actually really upset when it ended on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, it seems like he was taking more and more chances as the story went on and going more into a darker direction. Because as it started out, it was pretty standard kid fare. And the narration was even treating the readers like it was meant for kids, and describing pretty much everything that was happening, even though you could see it plainly in the panel itself. Speaking of which, what the heck is up with that random plague all of a sudden in the second half?
That is how Cezanne dies, and it is never explained, and it came out of nowhere, and it was made to make the main character depressed, and it was terrible.
That was the stupidest
a lot of the emotional moments don't work.
Yeah, I'm like, random plague! For no reason!
A lot of the emotional moments in this one don't work. There was one part where Tem reflects on his father's death, and I guess part of it could also be that maybe it's a personal bias, but I find that it's a lot harder for me to get emotionally worked up over manga than it is over like shows and movies. Like I cry all the time watching shows and movies, but manga has yet to really move me emotionally, so that could be part of it. But also at the same time, that scene is so heavily rushed that you don't get a chance to really feel the weight of it. Like, Tem losing his father is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's like, he did. Oh well. Chapter 2.
No, it's pretty much Tem is like, "Father, I'm sorry, I feel so bad," and then it just moves on.
Yeah.
My moment of that was during Tan's death. And it's when they're riding through the desert on a camel away from the guitar soldiers. And then we just see this moment where Tan has basically shielded Tem from all these arrows and falls over dead. I don't know if Miyazaki drew this himself or maybe he had someone helping him. I don't know what was going on at the time, but here's the thing. I could not help but notice Tan's face was just in this just big, shocked, mouthed face as he was falling over. And it was like, it completely killed the scene for me because it did not seem appropriate for the moment.
Well, what kind of face would you make if you were shot full of arrows?
I frankly don't know. Just, I would assume something less silly, I hope.
Yeah. Well, let's put that to the test. Come here, Walt. Let me shoot you full of arrows real quick.
Let me prepare the apple first. Jeez.
How about we shoot Hardy full of arrows first?
How about we just do a good old Mexican standoff? Everyone get in a circle, line up, and we'll shoot an arrow into each other.
Ennio Morricone's music starts playing in the background.
Why not? So, I think we have been talking about this series long enough. Hardy, final thoughts.
It's a thing.
Anything else, or?
It's not really the sort of thing that I would sit down and read, but considering its age and considering the relative inexperience of its author, it's a thing that exists.
Okay. Whitley, your final thoughts?
Okay. Sabaku no Tami is an interesting fossil from a veteran talent who was starting to get his grips in the late 60s. It feels very 60s-ish, it feels very archaic, and it's incredibly rough. There are parts of it that are definitely interesting, but as a whole, I wouldn't recommend reading it again, or like even reading unless you absolutely want to see where a brilliant talent got his start.
All right. I agree with that. This is a time capsule. This is not something you would seek out to read unless you wanted to see Miyazaki's beginnings, where his writing style started and how it developed into Nausicaa, into Princess Mononoke, into Spirited Away. This is the art style, very aged. The story kind of rushed, simply probably because of the format that it was in, being only 2 pages per chapter in a newspaper. And in the end, no, it's not really that good, but it is still interesting for what it is.
Yeah.
It is a project of its time.
I'd say it's also like it's one of those like peak curiosity types of stories, kind of like how I would view, say, maybe I don't know, like Perfect Blue for Satoshi Kon or something like that. It's still really rough, and it's interesting from a curiosity perspective, but outside of that, it's not really worth seeing or reading. In this case,
no one's first project is the best unless you're M. Night Shyamalan, and then that's the only one that's the good one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see we could fit in an M. Night Shyamalan joke for no reason whatsoever at the end of this. So, thank you everyone for joining us. Looks like the weather is clearing up now. Hardy, anything you'd like to plug while you're here?
Be sure to check out Lilac Anime Reviews Dub Talk. I am usually the co-host on it. The most recent episode was for a show called Show by Rock, in which me and Noah Clue and Divine Nega took over hosting duties for Lilac. It's the first ever episode I've hosted myself. Be sure to check that out. Also follow me on Twitter for lots of goat pictures and rants about Aniplex and references to Master Keaton and stuff.
Duty.
That was terrible, Zach. And I can second that. I love getting goat pictures from this man. It makes me smile, and it makes life worth living.
It just gets your goat, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I'm so glad we're ending on that. Goodbye, everyone. Oh, you have something to say?
As for me, you can follow my stuff and Walt's stuff on Infinite Rainy Day. I actually, as of right now, I'm kind of out of ideas. You can believe it, or you probably can't.
Isn't that the first time in 6 months, dude?
No, it's not. I usually get inspiration at the last second. But hopefully I'll have something for you. I'll have something up by the week of this podcast recording. I just need to really dig deep and find something.
Good luck, man. Good luck.
Yeah.
You can do it!
Saw his fucking head off.
And of course, you can always catch me on Twitter and YouTube. So, thank you all for watching. I'll catch you all next time. Later!
Bye.
Keep it manly.